Welcome to Season 2 of the SOAR podcast, the place for creative entrepreneurs who want to build healthier, happier, more profitable self-employed businesses. I'm your host, Ray Hyde Cornell, business mentor at Chiron Consulting and CEO and senior copywriter at Cornell Content Marketing. Get ready to soar. Welcome to the SOAR podcast. Today we have as our special guest, Gail Doby. Gail, please tell our listeners, what is it that you do? What is your business?
Well, thanks for asking, Ray Hyde. I really would say it very concisely. We help people make more money. And it can be from many different things, but we have people come to us at all levels of business. And no matter where they are, we have suggestions that will help them take it to the next level.
Okay. And what kinds of people do you work with? Do you work with people who have brick and mortar businesses, consultants, service providers, product sellers? Who do you work with?
Well, all of the above. And actually, we focus on the creative professionals, specifically interior designers, some architects, lighting designers. We've done landscape design, and we've even done a few CPAs and bookkeepers. So it depends on the people that we interact with. But what we find is that because my education and my background is finance first, then what I do applies to most businesses that I work with.
Okay. So tell me about your background. How did you get into this line of work? Because it sounds like you have a very broad net here where you can work with just about anyone who sounds like a solopreneur or an entrepreneur, and you help them with a lot of different things, but it all kind of stems from that finance place. So how did you get here?
Well, the first thing I did was I got a degree in finance and banking years and years ago. And after I got out and had my degree, I went to work for a Fortune 500 company. And I was trained in sales and marketing, which was fabulous training, great opportunity to learn that end of the business. And ironically, I started calling on interior designers and architects.
Hmm.
So my whole career, I have worked in the industry of home furnishings, working with people like that. And then eventually I went back, I started my MBA, didn't finish. I didn't want to stay in corporate. And then I went on to a business where I was doing consulting. And at that point, I had friends asking me to help them with their homes. And the next thing you know, I'm doing interior design. Went back, got an interior design degree, and I was working full time in my own business by the time I graduated with my second degree.
Wow.
So that's how I got here. And through that time, around 2007, we started noticing big changes in our clients. And also, I just think the behaviors of people once social media started. So we also were seeing some shifts financially, and we didn't understand the whole ramifications of it. So it's probably a year before we had the 2008 market crash.
Hmm.
And then when 2008 happened, by that time in March of 2008, we had, oh my gosh, we made the decision, my business partner and I, on starting this business. And it was a great decision in some ways, and it was a terrible decision at the same time. And the reason I say that is I wish I'd had a crystal ball where I could have predicted that 2008 in October, when we had our very first month of revenue, that the whole market would crash and
Yeah.
be a disaster for 3 years. So that was our journey to getting started with this business.
So being in business for 15 years, you've seen lots of up and downs. You've seen
Yeah.
the 2008 crash. You've seen, everything that's happened with COVID. And, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs today, and right now we're in October of 2022, who say that they've started their business because of COVID. But I also really enjoy talking to people who have been through these market ups and downs, because it gives you a really unique perspective on what can survive in these unpredictable circumstances. I think a lot of people hold themselves back from going all in on a business of their own because they think, oh, well, what if there's another economy crash? What if there's another pandemic? What if, what if we kind of get into these spirals and we just let our fear kind of take over? So from your perspective, making it through all of these, crazy economical events, what have you learned from each of these different crashes and evolutions of the way that people do business?
I love that you asked that question. And I have conversations with people about this all of the time. And what I tell people is, first of all, you can't expect everything to go up all the
Mm,
time, nor can you expect it to always go down. It's going to do both. And what you need to understand is you must start thinking that you should have a what if mentality and always know that there is something that will happen somewhere in a 3 to 7 year time frame. There will be some sort of a setback in your business. So plan for it.
yeah.
Make sure that you're thinking about that ahead of time, but don't let that stop you from starting a business. And I would tell you that as hard as 2008 was, our very first month in business, we did $86,000 of revenue.
Mm,
And we said, okay, let's quit our other business and let's go all in. And that's exactly when the market crashed. So we had to come back and figure out and pivot. And we have pivoted so many times, I can't even count. So, what I would tell you is the biggest lesson I could share is for any business that the things that teach you the most are the times that you have to pivot, the
yeah.
times that you're challenged, the times that it's not easy, the times that you can't see the road. And it's your reaction to this, and you're setting aside your emotions and your feelings and saying, by golly, that is my hint that I have to jump and go in all in. And if you do that, when you are facing your biggest, scariest times, the worst things happening to you, you will be 10 times ahead of everyone else in the marketplace. So I actually revel in those times because I know that's when I'm going to shine.
Yeah. And it's this idea of pivoting your business. I think back, and I've done this many, many, many times before. I typically describe it as I burn one thing to the ground and then start up something completely new. But over the years, that was kind of what I did early on, when I would be like, oh man, this client acquisition strategy, this way that I'm doing work, this pricing model I'm using, this is just not working. So I'm just going to burn it all to the ground, set myself free from these clients, and basically be in this sort of sink or swim position that I put myself in. And then I only have up to go, right? Because I'm working with nothing. But over the years, as you start to build a business that you really love and that you're really proud of, you don't want to burn it all to the ground. You want to make these pivots that are less dramatic and catastrophic and more intentional and nuanced. And so for you, what has pivoting really looked like? We say the word pivoting, and that could be, well, I'm changing from a product based business to a service based business, or I'm scaling down my team or scaling up my team, or what does it actually look like in practice when you say that you've pivoted?
Oh, I'll give you a couple of good examples. One was back in 2014 when I went to our second brand name, and that one was under my personal name, Gail
Mm,
Doby Coaching and Consulting. And that was the time when I was really the one that was coming up with the ideas. I was the front person, the spokesperson for the business. And that was fine for that period of time until this year. And literally last week, we have a brand new company name, Pearl Collective, and we have launched that in a big way. That's a massive pivot. And Pearl Collective is really designed for the next phase of the business. It's predicting that I will eventually not be running the company day to day. I will
mm,
be there in the background doing the big picture work that needs to be done, working, developing the big relationships and the big content and all those different things. And also finding the right people to work with us when we're ready to do those pivots. So I always hire consultants when I'm ready for a pivot. One of the most important things that I think anybody can take away from this is that you really must get professionals that have been on that path and that journey ahead of you that can shorten your time frame. It's going to
yeah.
cost you a little bit more upfront, but you will get back multiples every single time that you hire somebody to help you.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of the pivots that we've made. And I would say one of the ones that was the most notable was 2020. I was in New York when it was shutting down.
Mm,
Scary, scary, scary thing. I come back on March 14th. I have a conversation with our leadership team on the Tuesday following, and everybody is panicked about what are we going to do? How is this going to affect our business? And I said, I have no idea. I really do not know what's going to happen. But here's what I do know. Whatever we do, we have a lot of people who depend on us who need for us to lead the way. They
mhm.
need for somebody to be positive and to show them that there is hope, that this will end, this is temporary. And so we put together what we called Operation Ignite, and it was a series of 10 different Zoom calls. And the idea was we had people we interviewed that were really good in the industry, and we asked each one to share 10 key tips that they would recommend that the listeners apply. So 100 tips within
Mm.
about, I'd say, a 10-week period of time. And we had 2,000 people sign up for that. And in the end, we still hear about it. We are still hearing about it today because people said, that saved my business. That helped me through that really tough time. And so one of the things we noted last week as we were talking, my partner and I, we were on a flight to New York. And one of the things we noted that is when we do something for the industry at large, it's one of the greatest things we can do for our business.
Mm.
So the idea is if you can find a purpose outside of your own needing to have revenue and pay your staff, but you can see the bigger picture, something that you can do that gets people motivated and inspired, that is the thing that will differentiate your business and help you through some of the worst times.
Yeah, and really digging into what is it that I have to say? What is it that I have to give? What is it that I can contribute? Because ultimately, I love that we're talking about these pivots, and we talk about the housing market crash of 2008 and then recently with COVID in 2020. Those are wildly different situations. And yet they impacted businesses and homeowners and heads of
Yeah.
household in very similar ways, where we all kind of had to go, oh shit, the world's gone crazy.
Yeah.
What do we do? And the real answer when you're in the midst of those situations is you have no idea what's coming. You have no idea how long this is going to last. They told us what, 2 weeks, stay inside for 2 weeks and everything will be fine. We'll be back up and at them in April or May or whatever. And then it was 2 years later, right? When we finally start seeing some normalcy. You have no idea what's going to happen outside of you. But if during those times you can look inside of you and go, okay, I don't know what's going to happen out there, but I can count on myself. I know I can do this. I've built businesses from scratch in the past. I have made money out of thin air just using the power of my mind in the past. I have done this before. I can do it again. And you start to rely on yourself as opposed to getting super freaked out and panicked about what's going on outside of you that is really out of your control entirely.
Agreed. And to me, this is the time that it really determines if you're a leader.
Mhm.
And if you're not a leader, you shouldn't be in business for yourself, because if you have the fears that overcome you and you cannot get past those, you're going to give up. And I
Yeah.
would bet you that that's where a lot of people end up giving up on their businesses. And I would like to shift people's thinking into whenever those times happen, when they'll happen, and they
Yeah.
will happen often and unpredictably, always be ready. So I always love this one. I have to share this story because this one was so crazy to me. And it was in February of 2020. We had taken some of our top clients who $1 million plus businesses to see a friend of mine. He has a business up in Portland, Oregon. And when we had one of the breakout sessions, he said to our group, he looked at them and he said, you realize that COVID is going to close down the US.
Mm.
He said this in February of 2020 before it closed down.
Wow. And that's, I
And
think, when we were just starting to see cases in Florida, was it? And just a
the
few places on the East Coast?
the first one in Portland showed up the day after we were there.
Oh,
And I said, oh my gosh, why are you saying this? And he said, seriously, it's going to shut down the US. I said, okay, that is a little bit hard for me to comprehend.
Yeah.
And then I saw him a few days later because we were both in San Francisco, and it was starting to get really creepy. And the next week I'm on the plane going to New York. But he had already had it planned out with his financial team. He said, here is what we're going to do to cut costs. Here's who we're going to lay off in which order. And here's how we're going to make it through this period of time.
Mm.
And so he told everyone that. And of course, that's, I think, what was in the back of my head when we did Operation Ignite is, okay, it's here. He was right. And oh my God, I wish I'd listened to him. But it was
Yeah.
only 2 weeks before, and I was literally traveling the whole time. So, what I would say is always be ready for anything and always think about what is happening out in the world. Don't just look at your small microcosm of what you're doing, but really pay attention to some of the markers of what's happening in the economy. I don't obsess about it. I look at the New York Times headlines every day, but I look at these and I look at it from the perspective of what do I need to take from this and apply to my business?
Yeah.
And each time I'm looking for what I need to do. But I would also tell you that in these last 2.5 years, since we had this all happen, we have done more pivoting and more shifting and more changing. I wrote a book. We did the
Mm.
Operation Ignite. We have a brand new brand. We've done a huge launch. We are back to doing an industry survey. We're speaking all over the country. We have so many things going on for us, but we have gone in all in full force. We are there to be seen and to be known that we're here to help people survive whatever is coming their way. That's
Yeah.
our goal.
Well, and I think it's important in that example, with the gentleman that you're talking about, his pivoting and survival strategy involved laying people off, I heard you
Yep.
mention. And I think one thing that's really important to note when we're talking about pivoting and surviving these kind of unexpected turns in the market is you don't have to go against your values at the same time. I mean, that to me seems like a very corporate way to handle a pivot is, okay, where can we cut costs? We got to, lay these people off. But during 2020, my agency didn't let anybody go. We didn't get rid of a single
Either.
contractor. And similar to your example, what you're saying is instead of saying, okay, where can we cut costs? It's where can I add value? Where can I fill a need that other people, as we're going through this, I hate this phrase because we're all sick of hearing it from COVID, but we're all in this together. So how can we band together, provide resources to one another, and not have to go against our values, not break up our family of team members within this organization? And so really approaching each pivot as an opportunity to highlight something that's special about what you're building. I think that's more important than turning to the fear side of things, which that's what I would call it in this, okay, we got to lay people off. We got to, sell our office space. We got to sell our fax machines and, that kind of reactivity. And I like that that's the way that you approached this of these 10 weeks of 10 tips and really giving back to the industry that you're committed to.
Mhm. And it's paid off for us in such a big way. And as we have come back through this whole process, it gave us time to evaluate who are we? What are we doing? How are we serving our clientele? And how that relates to your listeners is that each person needs to find out what is that special something that you do?
Mm.
Like you said, the value. What is that value that you bring to the marketplace that no one else does? What is that one thing that you do that's so uniquely you that no one else could do? And you can do it better, and then you can stand out from everyone else. And I have to say that as we have gone through this huge launch process for our new brand, and this is huge, and we just had 2 interviews this morning before you, and it was with big people in our industry, and it's
Yeah.
because we are making a big splash. So whatever you do, go about it as if you're going to make the biggest splash imaginable and that you're going to get to the broadest audience and that you're going to build relationships within the broader market and the broader industry. Because the minute that you start establishing yourself as an expert in the industry and that you're a leader and you're leading the thought leader process with the industry, everybody else kind of falls away. They
Yeah.
can't compare to you if you are actually bringing something uniquely you to the market. Nobody can be you.
So far, we've been talking in the context of these bigger organizations and bigger teams, but we're going to take a super short commercial break. And when we come back, I want to get more down into the individual, the solopreneur, the freelancer, and how we can apply some of these ideas to that person who is just a company of one as of now. So we will be right back.
All right.
Hey, Ray here. Ever wish this whole creative self-employment thing was easier? Like, wouldn't it be nice if there was, I don't know, a step-by-step guide for building a successful freelance business? You know where I'm going with this, right? That guide does exist. Back in the day when I first started out hustling and side gigging, I wish I had a roadmap to fast track my way to self-employed success. So I made one for you. No matter where you are in business, I guarantee you this guide can help you get to the next stage faster, and the next, and the next. Whether you're still deciding if ditching the W-2 is right for you, or if you're struggling with your pricing, business formation, client acquisition, sales, or even health insurance, this guide has everything you need. Get your free copy of the complete guide to building a successful freelance business at chironconsulting.us/guide. All right, we are back with Gail Doby. So Gail, we've been talking about these giant pivots that we've had to make because of the market, and you run a consulting firm and you have a lot of people working for you. You have a team of coaches and consultants. I run a marketing agency. We have at our biggest, we had a team of about 25, and now we've scaled back in the last 8 months or so, and we now have a team of about 15 to 17. But what about people who don't have a team? They're just a company of one. They are solopreneurs. They are creative freelancers. I think a lot of what you've said still applies to them, and we need to kind of reframe this conversation in the sense that when we're talking about, you said making a big splash and really being a leader, that doesn't mean that you have to go out and get a following of 50,000 Instagram followers or whatever it might be, or have this massive LinkedIn network. Really, this is a mindset of being the leader of your own life, being the leader of the way that your business is evolving, and just choosing to be deliberate and intentional about what you're building so that you can have that endurance through no matter what the market throws your way.
I would suggest a couple of things for someone that's thinking about starting a business or they're in the early phases of the business. I can give you tons of suggestions, but I'll give you a couple that I think are pivotally important for that person. And the first one is that you need a plan. And it starts with a vision. If you have a vision that is inspiring to yourself, that you can't help but build, you will do it. You will stick through the tough things, the fun things, all of those things, of which it's mostly tough. But the thing is, it's a journey, and you have to be prepared for the journey. But start with a vision, and then from that vision, really think about what it's going to take to create that vision, make that happen, and assume it's going to take twice as long and at least twice as much money. So if you go into it with that thinking, okay, well, yes, I could start a business tomorrow for about $100. Well, that's true. But is that really what you are intending to do? What is the purpose of what you're intending to do? What impact will you make on someone else? And how are you going to change their lives? So really focus on what it is you can contribute to that other person, because the value that you bring and the way you sell it to other people with passion is how you're going to get people to buy from you.
Yeah.
And whether we like it or not, we're all salespeople. And if you don't like sales, get over it, because it's part of doing business. Because if you can't pay the bills and you can't pay your team, then you're not going to stay in business. So the reality is, if you do not want to sell or overcome your fear of sales, then do go work for someone else. It's the best thing for you to do.
Well, and I think the latter part of what you just said is really what people need to fixate on, is reframe the way that you think about selling. Because yes, selling is a mechanism of business, and we're probably always going to call it that, but you don't have to take everything that you associate with sales, whether it's being pushy or manipulative or persuasive or convincing. I swear, I don't convince anybody to hire me anymore. I did early on in my business, 10, 12, 13 years ago. I'm like, oh, this is why I'm the right person for the job. And this is why you should pick me. But really, what I learned over the years is that when you just focus on the other pieces of what you just said, where you are passionate about what you're doing and you're coming to the table with a solution and you're talking to the people who have the problem that your solution is designed to fix, you don't have to sell. You are really in this symbiotic relationship where it makes perfect sense for you guys to work together. And then it's just a matter of, okay, how much is it? Okay, what are the payment terms? Okay, let's get started. But it's reframing your idea around selling so that you don't have to feel like you're doing something that's out of character for you or that just feels icky, especially for people who tend to be more introverted or more artistic and really love what they do because they are creative. And so they don't want to get into those kind of non-creative left brain side of the business building pieces. But really, it's just a matter of how you look at it.
Mhm. Well, you mentioned the key word, which is it's relationship building. So
Mhm.
if you can approach it that it's relationship building,
Yeah,
you're going to find that it's not hard to get people to want to buy from you because you had that answer. And if you care about people, they sense it, they feel it. But if you're trying to make a transaction, they sense that and they're not going to be as
exactly.
interested. So we're looking for the relationship versus the transaction. And for us, we work with people for years and they keep coming back because we have solutions for them that nobody else offers in the marketplace. And we're at that position where over the years, I have refined a lot of different things that we do, tools and strategies and things that other people don't do. We have ways of doing it that we don't even worry about our competition because they don't do what we do. We're
Exactly.
like a different animal. And it's not because I'm trying to be egotistical about it, is we've worked hard to differentiate
Yeah.
ourselves because we understand that's what people are looking for. Make it easy for them to make a decision.
Yeah.
So I think that's really part of the key, but just remember that please don't go into this without a plan. And that's where so many people fail because they haven't really put together a financial model, and you need a financial model. So what is it going to cost you to start up the business? What does it cost you to operate out of your home if that's where you are? What is it going to cost you, or what will it bring in for you to have somebody that is on your team that is helping you bring in revenue? And once you start understanding that your whole business model, your financial model is the key to success, then you know what you need to do every day. It is very clear. Okay, today I need to make 10 phone calls because that's what I need to do to get one person to move forward with us.
Mm.
And you change your thinking process to, instead of being emotional, you are very logical about your approach about your business. It's easier to operate your business if you're not emotionally triggered by the things that happen.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's something that a lot of creative entrepreneurs we get tripped up on because the thing
sure.
that we're putting out, it's of our own creation, whether it's something we've written or designed or, VA services. Oh, did I do this right or did I do this wrong? Social media services.
Yep.
It's so based on what we have come up with our own minds and with our own passion and creativity. And yet, when it comes to the client acquisition process, there is quite a bit of just numbers involved. It's a numbers game. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone needs to get on a call and start cold calling companies. You also have to kind of dabble and figure out, okay, there's this method, there's this method, there's this method, there's this method, and find the one that works for you so that you can maximize those conversions. If you make 10 calls and you land one client, and you send 10 emails and you land two clients, and you go to 10 networking events and you land 100 clients, well, guess which one I'm going to point you towards? It's
Exactly.
about figuring out what those are, the techniques that work best for you. And then that gives you that predictable system of, okay, I know if I go to this one conference, I'm going to come home with at least 3 clients. Is it worth it? Yes. Okay, that's my goal. Let's go see if I can have that good, better, best goal.
Absolutely. And that's exactly the conversation I had with my business partner. We were on the flight coming back from New York this week. And we started talking about marketing. And I said, okay,
Mm,
let's look at this. We have done this particular method of getting new leads for 3 years. And I said, it's a 3-year cycle for our business. If I look back on the 15 years, we can see that this worked for 5 years or this worked for 3 years. Start watching your cycles in your business, especially when you're small, and notice what works and stop doing the things that don't work. Make sure you're getting a return on investment. And sometimes you have to tweak things several times to figure out, is it really not working? But if it's taking a lot of resources within your company, which was our conversation, I said, well, what if we shift this? What if we did this? What if we did that? And maybe we still keep this as a program, but we don't use this as a lead generation.
mm,
So we had this really interesting conversation on the flight, and it got Erin thinking about it. And she said, I kind of like this thought. And so we look back at, and we have the statistics. We know where our leads come from. We know where our sales come from. So let's take a look at that and do more of that. And
yeah.
let's quit doing the things that are wearing at our team, and let's be smarter about our resources and our strategies. So be strategic, don't be tactical. That's
Yeah.
another key tip that I would give people, because I often see people saying, well, I saw this on the internet, or I saw that on the internet.
Hmm.
And it's the next shiny object. And they try that. And next thing you know, it's not getting them anywhere because they had no strategy behind it. So figure out
Right.
your strategy first, and then put the plan together, and then decide on the tactics. And by golly, measure what you're doing and make sure you have statistics to back up your decisions.
I think that's such an important distinction because a lot of people confuse strategy and tactics. And in my mind, I want to hear what your kind of definitions of these things are. But in my mind, tactics are the tasks. Tactics are task
Yep.
oriented, whereas strategy is a process of reverse engineering. If
Yeah.
this is the goal,
Right.
okay, what needs to happen in order for us to get to that goal? Okay, and then what needs to happen in order for us to do that? And what needs to happen in order for us to do that? And you just kind of go backwards in this chain until you get to a point where you say, okay, I think that's where we are now. So now we know what our first step is.
Mhm.
That is something that I think a lot of people confuse. Oh, I'm going to go out on Instagram and just DM people. That's not a strategy, that's a tactic. So for you, when you look at putting together a strategy, what advice would you give someone who is trying to build a business that's going to last for the long haul, that they want to invest their time and energy smartly, but also don't want to kind of just dip and dabble in all of these tactics?
Well, that goes back to what we talked about originally, which is have a clear vision, and then
Mm,
from that,
yeah.
develop a clear plan. And the plan could be that I want to start off this year and I want to do $100,000 in my business. Okay. Well, that 100,000 is what we call the vanity line, which is the top line of the business. But what you really should care about is the bottom line and what's
Mm,
left over after you pay all your bills.
yes.
And so a 100,000 will not take care of one person's lifestyle needs in most cases, because they're going to be lucky to have 10,000 left over.
Mm,
So you have to set your goals based on what is that bottom line number I need. And then from there, we do what we call a bottom up budget, where you figure out what that bottom line is, and then you figure out what that profit margin is. So if it's 10%, you
yes.
need 10 times whatever it is that you want to earn. So if it's 100,000 you want to earn, you need to have $1 million business. Well, then how do you structure that business? And that's what we do with people, is we build out these 3-year models for them and say, okay,
Mhm.
based on this, you need this number of clients. And then we break it down into what are the strategies that we need to employ in order to get those clients. And then you figure out how you're going to market, and what results you need to have. And then you tweak as you go, but always measure, 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 measure all of your results. And so those are the things I would say, is just to keep that in mind as people are listening to this. Is it's really fun. I love running a business. It's hard work, and you've got to love the hard work. And to me, that's just a sign of achievement and accomplishing things and learning. And if you love to learn and accomplish, then running a business could be great for you. It also could be the worst thing in the world for you. But, you know, but you have to decide where you fit and
Yeah.
whether you're willing to ride the roller coaster of the emotions that go with it. And luckily,
Mhm.
I have someone who is, she and I started working together and she wanted to have a family. And I just said, let's figure out a business that we can do together that fits both of us and we'll make this work.
Yeah.
And we could see that there was a need in the marketplace. So that's a clue too, is find the need in the marketplace that you can fulfill better than anyone else.
Yeah.
And then become the expert in that area and be known for it. Make sure that you get your name out there. Make sure that you're seen by the people, even if it's in your town of 10,000 people. Become the expert in whatever it is that you're doing and speak and talk to people, lead workshops, do things in the community, do some give back, because all of those things will get you out there and visible in a different way.
Yeah,
So look at the
absolutely.
big levers that you can use in your business instead of the small little steps that seem safer or a little less scary to do. So you have to do the hard stuff and the scary stuff. Go for it. That's always the way to get to the top, is do the scary stuff. Do it first.
And I love that this common theme of all of these tips that you've provided, it always comes back to you. What can you do? And even with your pricing model, I do the same thing with our clients on the Chiron side with our price yourself perfectly model, but on a much smaller, freelance scale. We're not talking about $10 million businesses. We're talking about, okay, so you want to make $75,000 this year. It's what do you want to make? Okay, now you're going to have to pay taxes. So this is how much you're actually going to make. And then what are your expenses? So this is actually what you're going to need to make. And then what profit buffer do you want to have on top of there, just in case, your computer catches fire and you got to buy a new one or whatever that might be. But you always have to start with, what do you need? And then the same thing with you and your business partner. She wants to have a family. You're looking at, okay, this is what is the top priority for you, having a family. So what does that mean? You have this many hours to give the business. You have this amount of availability. You have this area of expertise. This is where we can leverage you the best. You're always starting by looking at you. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people are not willing to do nowadays. And instead, they look out at the Instagram and LinkedIn world and they go, oh, this person is doing this. And oh, I should be doing that. And this person is doing that. Oh, I should be doing that. That doesn't matter. That never works. It always has to come back to you. And I think that's a beautiful common thread through everything that you've shared today.
Mhm.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, it's very rare, in my experience at least, to find people who have been self-employed for 15 plus years. I feel like a lot of people were seeing people job hopping all over the place. They're gigging on the side over here, but then they're multi-passionate. So they start this other thing over here. If you could give advice to yourself 13 years ago when you were just starting your business, what would now 15 years of experience you say to 2 years of experience you?
Well, I'd have to go back a little further because I've been self-employed for 35 total because it's my
Oh,
second
okay.
business. Yes. So I would probably go back and tell that very naive person
Mm.
to do all the things I said at the beginning of the call, which is to have a vision, have a plan, understand the financials in the business, put together a financial model, actually know how you're going to get to where you're going to go, and assume it's going to take twice as long and cost twice as much. And if you do those things, you will start off and have less stress. So have reserves, make sure that you have money set aside to weather the storm. Make sure that you have at least 6 months, preferably a year, of living expenses. And you can live on less than you think if you really desire to start a business. And if you do desire to start a business, many people start when they're working for someone else. Be careful of non-competes, make sure that you're doing the right thing,
Yeah.
but make sure that just test your ideas prior to launching and make sure that your idea is going to generate money for you. And you need to ask people, is this something that you'd be interested in? And what would you be willing to invest in that if I were to have a product?
Yeah.
And so if people think about things ahead of time, they can prevent a lot of the heartaches of starting a business and really struggling at the beginning or any time in the business. So hopefully that it will at least give them some ideas to start with.
Absolutely. You have given us so many things to think about and so many great actionable tips. I mean, really sitting down and thinking about what is your real vision? What are you an expert in? These are things that people can do right now. Go get a piece of paper, go sit down at your dining room table or your desk or your couch, whatever you want. Go figure these things out because it's that mental work that is going to leap you forward. So, Gail, where can people check you out if they want to learn more about your business and what you do and the messages that you're putting out there?
Well, thank you for asking. And our new brand is thepearlcollective.com. And you can also look on Amazon. And I have a book that is a great starting point for you. It's called Business Breakthrough.
Hmm.
And it's designed to help you do all the first steps in your business and get you to a point of profit. So I would recommend that they go download that book. It's very helpful. It's a quick read and it will give you action steps that will help you get started on your plan. Doesn't matter if you're in interior design, it applies to every business.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Gail. This has been a great conversation.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Ray.
Hey, Ray here again. Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please subscribe and rate us in your favorite podcasting platform. Want to be a guest on the show or know someone who has an amazing story of entrepreneurship? Apply on our website at chironconsulting.us/podcast.